And thank you everyone for coming today. My name is Sateesh Peri. I'm currently working as a bioinformatics developer / training specialist at as a contractor to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, USA. And today I'm here to share my experience developing the training materials and workshops, short format workshop series in the effort to move towards Nextflow, using Nextflow Workflow Manager for scientific computing projects at CDC. So in that respect, we have a lot. I have a lot of links and resources to share today, but all of them can be accessed through this one central link that Jason has already shared with you earlier. So what I'll try to do today over the next 40-45 minutes is try to give an overview over the rationale, over the design of the workshop, and also walk you through the different aspects of Nextflow workflow management system, and also NF Core, which is a community that's been built around using Nextflow to develop peer-reviewed best practice bioinformatics pipelines, data analysis pipelines. And also some recommendations on how you can use this as a setup for hosting training sessions at your own institution. And we in the morning call, we also left off with probably we could have future extended sessions where we actually go into the full training that I'll show you in the website that we have today. So with that, I'll share my screen. Okay. Right. So the link, the training material is hosted on publicly on GitHub, and it's been designed around introducing Nextflow workflow management system, and also not only introducing Nextflow, but also introducing it in the aspect of building a variant calling workflow. So that's why we call it we have called it the variant calling edition of Nextflow tutorial. So this primarily deals with build our development of reproducible, scalable, and shareable analysis workflows with Nextflow. And I do first want to start off with the credits here, that this particular tutorial, when we were getting started with how do we develop the material, as we were tasked to develop kind of like tailor the material towards public health analysts whom we were trying to offer training to here at the CDC. So we kind of like decided to introduce or take variant calling examples, which are mostly used in surveillance programs here. So we thought SNP variant calling identification would be a good example. And so in that aspect, the training material that we have here today is basically a fusion of two other training material sources. One is the introduction to Nextflow carpentry course that is being developed currently. It's in the pre-alpha stages. And all the links are linked in the material here. So this is the actual framework for Nextflow introduction that we actually took for our training material as a template. This is a very in-depth carpentry course that is being developed that could very well take at least more than 12 hours to finish the entire section. As you can see, they're estimating it as 10 or 15, but it's more than 10 hours. and it's very comprehensive at the moment. But when we were trying to design our workshops, we were primarily limited by the time we could engage our learners. So we were given a maximum of only 9 hours to introduce the entire or go through the entire workshop. So in that aspect, we actually took the template from the main carpentry course and fused it with examples from the data carpentries, wrangling and processing for genomics chapter. Took the variant calling workflow, where in this particular chapter, they teach how to assemble the variant calling workflow using a bash script. So we kind of like took the examples from the wrangling genomics lesson and used it in the Nextflow framework from the carpentry course here, and tailored the content here in that aspect. And with that, we ended up with this session material that is kind of like tailored for more or less 9 hours, as we have estimated it. We have currently delivered this workshop twice to 25 participants each in each session. And the sessions itself were divided into 3 hours each. So you'll see the breakdown of the individual chapters also here by sessions and the amount of time it takes here, just so that it helps with the planning of the workshop for you as a trainer. So 3 sessions of 3 hours each was what worked out for us, where in the first session, we go through we actually had to tailor this again to our local compute and scientific computing environment, which is internal to CDC, where we also had to optimize or show researchers how to use how to deploy Nextflow pipelines onto our local HPC infrastructure. So we kind of initially we developed it for that, but recently I was made aware of this free resource called Gitpod, which basically provides a full-scale developer environment, which is presented through a VS Code interface that comes with Nextflow, Conda, Docker, and any other software, if you like, pre-installed, so that users can get started with running the tutorial right away. So that's what I have linked in this here, but you could very well tailor it to making local installs of Nextflow and all the required tools as per your institutional setup, and still continue with the tutorial. But if you're interested in checking out Gitpod, this is where we'll get started and launch the Gitpod here to show you some of the features. Detailed instructions are in the setup section. To simply launch Gitpod, you can click on the button. I would recommend opening it in a new tab. This will lead you to this page where it's going to pull the particular configuration from a Git repo that I have that comes with, as I've said earlier, it comes with Nextflow, Conda, and Docker installed. So the idea with having Conda and Docker in this particular environment is, as we introduce Nextflow, we also introduce how to use Nextflow with different software management tools such as Conda and Docker. So throughout the progression of the chapters that we have over here, you'll notice that initially we do not deal with using any software management tool. That is why we actually use Conda to install all the tools for variant calling workflow using an environment.yaml file initially. But as we move into the later chapters, in the configuration chapter, we show how to use Conda to actually create an environment. Nextflow can create the environment for you, and so that you don't have to create the environment yourself. And also by modules chapter, we show how to use containers so that you can see how you can use all these different ways of managing software using all these tools using Nextflow. To launch, once the Gitpod launches, you'll see an interface that looks like this. This is a VS Code interface. It's an interactive development and an environment. You get a terminal and you get a code editor and a file explorer. We'll go through some section here while I get set up on some data here. So you'll see the instructions in the setup also walk you through once the Gitpod launches. There are three steps basically to update the environment using the existing environment file there. Fetch the raw data and trim the raw data. Fetch the raw data and trim the raw data. And once you have the data set up, then you can get started with the introduction to Nextflow. And let me walk back. So just a little bit more about the layout of the chapters that we have over here. In the first session, once you have set up ready with the environment with Nextflow, the first chapter is introduction and also where you get to run, and you can see the individual learning objectives here listed out for that particular chapter. And in the first session, we also introduced NF Core. NF Core is a community-led project to develop a set of best practice pipelines built using Nextflow. Even the links for NF Core are linked out in the chapter. So here you can see all the different, currently there are about like 65 pipelines available as part of NF Core. And you can click on any one particular pipeline and you can read a lot more details about what exactly the pipeline does, a pipeline diagram, how to use that pipeline with test data sets that are made available, summary of steps, and all of these are peer-reviewed, continuously tested against a test data set on AWS Cloud with clear usage and parameter docs, as you can see. So this is was a very nice way for us to tell researchers to not reinvent the wheel, but try to find existing pipelines that might fit the needs of your research. And there are quite some popular, so like the RNA-seq one is the quite popular one. I have used it, and it produces out-of-the-box results, which are highly customizable, quite extensive RNA-seq pipeline. So try that out. So so we do run in the tutorial. We do run one of the NF Core pipelines with test data sets, and finally, towards the end of the first session, we also have running those NF Core pipelines with test data sets onto our HPC. Now that is one chapter you might want to ignore on Gitpod, because to run on Gitpod, you can run them using Docker containers, but of course the HPC chapter you might want to reserve for when you're testing on your own institutional config. But the instructions are there, customized for Slurm schedulers, but you can read through Nextflow documentation on how to customize it for your own constitutional config. Now, the second session is where we get into the nitty-gritty details of actual Nextflow syntax. We start with Nextflow scripting chapter, where we introduce the Nextflow DSL2 syntax and talk about the three main pillars of Nextflow, which are Nextflow channels, Nextflow processes, and Nextflow workflow. So channels, processes, and workflow deal with channels basically deal with how to move data in and around different parts of the workflow. processes define how what a particular process does and takes as input and produces as output, and how do you assign and control different resources that are being allocated to that particular process. And in the workflow section, we talk about how you stitch together different processes to basically assemble your workflow. And in addition to that, Nextflow is a subset of the Java Groovy programming language. So Nextflow itself is a domain-specific language, and it's also sitting on the subset of the Groovy programming language. So that gives the additional flexibility of using these operators that can modify the contents and the behavior of channels, that is the contents within of your files itself. So use of operators helps with fine tuning and more fine-grained manipulation of data within your channels, within your workflow. And finally, we get to, in session 3, we get to start getting to convert the variant calling bash script, which we have taken from the data carpentry wrangling genomic lesson, and asking our learners to convert the bash script into a Nextflow workflow. Towards the Nextflow configuration chapter, we show how to use Conda environments, Docker, Singularity containers in special configuration files that Nextflow uses that are separate from the pipeline logic, pipeline code itself. And recently, with the advent of domain DSL2 syntax in Nextflow, it's become now possible to modularize the pipeline and reuse many parts, which are essentially tools within your workflows. Now, if you think several different bioinformatics workflows could have several overlapping parts, overlapping tools. And by modularizing these tools, we are actually boosting the reusability of the modules, and also making sure that many people are not writing the same piece of code which already has been written and can be used by making it as generic and with the use of the DSL2 syntax, it makes that possible. And the same logic also applies to something that's evolving currently into sub workflows, is to use certain sections of workflows that can be reused and shared through open source management. Now, workflow management systems also, the push for workflow management systems is their contribution or their help for us in contributing towards capturing different runtime metrics in reporting, capturing the different software versions, and also caching and checkpointing, so that any failed runs, especially on big sample clusters, do need to support reentrancy, so that you're not re-wasting resources and time, and they need to support caching. So these chapters walk you through how you can resume a stalled or a failed workflow execution run. And finally, all the chapters are intentional in their design to interleave examples and also just build on all the previous examples that are introduced in the previous chapters. But towards the end, we also show how the easy way or the NF core way of assembling the variant calling workflow by using already existing DSL2 modules. So if the NF core website also is now featuring all the currently available modules, you can see there are almost about like 470 modules currently part of NF core. And each module here has been contributed as part of the open source project management system of NF core. And this makes it super helpful as it's standardized. So NF core is all about standardization, and this standardization has help people come and contribute very easily, and also interact with each other in development of these modules, because there's now a common set of standards that we can adhere to and talk to about. So we find, yeah, as I was saying, the last chapter we have there shows how to assemble the previous workflow, but now using existing NF core modules. So this was what we could squeeze into 9 hours, divided into 3 sessions. As I said, the original carpentry course is what we told our learners as something that they need to take as the main reference and keep going back to, as it's covered in a lot more in depth, and it has more exercises and some more information that we had to actually chop off to stay within our 9-hour time limit. But we also asked them to, once we finish the variant calling edition, we asked them to complete the carpentry, go through the carpentry material, as well as they use an RNA-seq pipeline example to explain the concepts in their version of the tutorial. All in all, knowing both these RNA-seq and the variant calling workflows helped learn the concepts of Nextflow very easily for many of us here. So that's about the layout. Now, as I said, the Gitpod is a recent addition, and to follow, if you and also we have designed the material itself to kind of be amenable to self-learning. So pretty much you should be able to read through the material and follow through the code and execute it in your Gitpod if you're following it. And a little bit more about Gitpod, as if you are planning to use it in a classroom setup, it does have some constraints, but Gitpod gives you about like 50 hours per month to run any one particular environment with up to 4 parallel workspaces. And any, it's also, you can keep coming back to your Gitpod environment, because if it's inactive for 30 minutes, it'll idle out. But you can reopen back the environment by saving the URL. And so in that way, you can keep coming back and continuing your tutorial at your own pace, so that you don't lose your progress. So in that aspect, it helps a lot. And we have received some good feedback on using Gitpod for running this tutorial. So I would be happy to hear more from this community as well about their experience on using Gitpod going forward. We can discuss more about this as well. But I do want to quickly show, I'll just run these commands now. Try to run a simple Nextflow workflow script, or maybe I'll just run an NF core pipeline as we have in the NF core chapter, just to show you how we can run these NF core pipelines with a test profile. So as we said, all NF core pipelines are continuously tested against using test data sets on the AWS cloud. So it's possible to run the same test locally when you're testing your current setup. So let me see if I can run this in our Gitpod. This is a command to run NF core backmap pipeline. So to take you to what is the backmap pipeline, going to the main NF core website. Let's see if I can find backmap. Backmap is a mapping-based pipeline for mapping short reads for bacterial whole genome sequencing to a reference sequence, creating filtered VCF files, making pseudogenomes based on high-quality positions in VCF files, and optionally creating phylogeny from alignment of pseudogenomes. So you can read more about this, but just as I said, to run it with test data set, let's see if that works out. And you notice we did not download any files. So what this is doing right behind the scenes is it's actually pulling from GitHub the actual source code. So all NF core pipelines reside in GitHub, and by using the Nextflow run command and providing which NF core pipeline that you're planning to run, you can just provide the GitHub website, and it's automatically going to pull the pipeline for you, whichever particular revision that you're interested in. And here we are asking it to run this particular pipeline using the test dataset and using Docker, which is currently available in the Gitpod environment to use as the software management tool. And when it launches, you'll see a lot of information that is printed out. All the config that is currently being used will be printed out. And here you'll see the actual execution of the Nextflow workflow itself. Here are individual processes, and here you see the progress towards the right as the workflow progresses. So this was a great way for us to start our training sessions. Once we got them to run some NF core pipelines in our first session of the workshop series, then we got into the session 2, we got into the actual details of channels, processes, workflows, and operators. And throughout these 3 sessions, we actually encouraged our learners to form pairs. And we also encouraged the use of VS Code as their tool, as VS Code has some extensions for allowing for pair programming. So we encouraged learners to team up in pairs and finish converting the variant calling bash workflow, bash script into into a Nextflow workflow. Just so to show you what was the challenge that we were giving our learners, was this is the variant calling workflow from the wrangling genomics lesson. And in that lesson, you'll see this is the bash script that is finally produced. So we asked learners to convert this particular bash script based on the principles that we have introduced in channels and processes chapter, and convert that into a Nextflow workflow. And we actually do finish the first, we do give them the first 4 processes, and we ask them to finish the last 4 steps of the workflow, which should finally result in a workflow that looks something like this. This is a pipeline DAG that is also produced by Nextflow upon its run. So we ask them, this is how your final variant calling workflow steps should look like. And we encourage them to work in pairs, which also was, we received for good positive feedback where working in pairs helped with the learning. So that's about the format. So now this is what we were discussing in the morning section in our morning call is there is some interest in the community to actually deliver this 9-hour session, these 3 sessions, maybe in upcoming sessions hosted in a separate module such as
And I'm just checking.
They said like this has helped us get about like 50 public health researchers who had no introduction to Nextflow previously, quite comfortable with upon multiple rewatches of the videos from the sessions to actually get quite comfortable with running Nextflow workflows on our local HPC infrastructure. And we are now currently moving towards or pushing more towards adopting NF4 style standards for all our pipeline development. That's because NF4 not only provides just pipelines, but they also provide companion templates, that is for developers of pipelines using Nextflow. They provide a lot of tools. Let me see if I can find them. Yeah, tools for developers working using Nextflow and NF Core, and using all these has been also a great push towards reproducible research, as it pushes towards working with an open source organization in contributing to a project, or to an open source project and community in general, and thereby enforcing some good standards, working with people from all over the world. It's been a great experience, just spending time on Nextflow and NF Core Slack workspaces, spending time on their help channels, getting more information on how to create new modules, how to incorporate new modules, learn how the review process works, and how to use GitHub efficiently for collaborating with others on creating these modules and also different pipelines. And the companion tools that NF Core has, these are basically templates of pipelines that you can get a quick start with to start, like a quick start to start developing your pipeline. We have discussed those as well. So again, all of these are several topics of interest, depending on going forward on the interest in the community. We would, at least I would be interested in giving more detailed online virtual series on how basically you can contribute more to the open source and of course community. Also after learning Nextflow with the tutorial links that I have. Let's see if I have. So here is the pipeline backmap test run completed. It took about like 3 minutes and 59 seconds. And here in the results section, you can see a lot of information from the pipeline execution. You can also find in the information about the output being produced by going to the pipeline website itself, and each pipeline, there's a description of the output docs that are produced by the pipeline. So here you can read about all the different files that are produced and compare. And as I was talking about, the aspects of Nextflow that are important for reproducibility are some captured like, look something like this. Let's see if I can. These are the execution reports. I don't think I can open the HTML files here. But these are all the in-depth execution summary reports, timeline reports, and DAGs from the execution of this particular run that can be, and also it also captures all the software versions so that you don't have to. You can just incorporate these in your supplementary figures for your publication. The Gitpod also has 3 PDF files available that can be used as a 1-hour seminar material prior to your workshop series. So that's how before we actually jumped into the 3 sessions of 9 hours in total interactive workshop series, we actually held a 1-hour seminar introduction using the slides here. So here we talk about, we introduce Nextflow in terms of why we should be using Nextflow in terms of reproducible research, and some links here about how Nextflow checkboxes or tick boxes, the different aspects of reproducible of the reproducibility agenda that we have been trying to push towards, or trying to establish standards for. So you can use these slides as a seminar material. We have material covered that these slides in typically about an hour worth of time. So an hour introduction of seminar and 9 hours worth of workshop content is what worked out for us in our training series here. So you can open PDFs here as well, and as you can say, as I've said, you can this Gitpod, you can use it and save your progress, stop the workspace, and reopen the same URL and come back and finish your tutorial. And let's see. Yeah, I think that's all I have. In the interest of time, as I do want to open it up for the community to ask questions, and but my offer still stands on, obviously we do not, this is a lot of material to cover in say even in an hour or a couple of hours, but I also have had several learners take it upon themselves to self-learn, go through the material on their own, use Gitpod as their environment setup, and go through the material on their own and finish it at their own pace. And we have had I have had quite some people complete it that way and give me feedback on how they have been able to complete it successfully. Thank you for giving me the opportunity for sharing my experience on developing these short format training workshop series. And I'd be happy to open the floor up for discussion and